On this Uplevel Dairy Podcast, we hear from Washington State dairyman Galen Smith as we touch on more than 20 years of cow monitoring at Coldstream Farms and how technology is a tool in data-driven decision-making that Galen believes is critical for managing dairy profitability in their challenging local milk market. We'll dig into all of this and more here today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This episode is part of the High Performance Mindset series powered by Nedap. Nedap is future-proofing dairy farming with smart technologies and activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, sort gates, and AI-powered camera systems. Nedap is improving life on the farm by putting the right cow in the right place at the right time, every time. Galen, in your words, just give me an introduction to Coldstream Farms.
We're milking about 1,800 cows, and we are in the northwest corner of Washington State. So you think about Seattle, we are 20 minutes from the Canadian border, 10 to 15 minutes from the water. One unique thing about our geographical region is we are this first mountain range in from the coast. And so we get about 70 inches of rain annually. And most of that comes from October to March. So not when we need it, when it piles up in our lagoons.
So it's a beautiful landscape, I'm certain, a landscape that also has some challenges environmentally, but truly it's been a place for your family to grow in the dairy business. You've been a dairyman now for 25 years yourself. And in fact, it's been almost 25 years since you first started implementing some of those early monitoring devices. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally true. So as I joined and became a partner of the dairy around 2006, we were looking ways to implement technology on our farm. How do we, animal monitoring systems that are more concise to the animals, maybe more labor efficient. And so we were one of the early adapters of the original pedometer, what I might say. So that only read every time the cow came through the parlor, and it would tell you what she did since the last time she came through. So we implemented that in about 2006 with some sort gates and began working at that time with GEA, some of our semen company providers. At that time, it was Select Sires, to help us to really start monitoring our reproduction on our farm. And it slowly progressed, and those pedometers outdated themselves and batteries started to die and those types of things. And so in 2014, we invested in the 2 hour tag where that would be recorded and stored. And my all this technology along the way had been being built by Nedap a bit in the background. And so you take one step further, we had 2 hour monitoring tags that were implemented in around 2014, 2015. And now here we are 10 years later that those tags and those batteries are starting to fail. So we had to really look what technologies were available and out there in the 2022, 2023 timeframe, evaluate all those technologies. And ultimately, we ended up reinvesting in the Cow Scout collars built by Nedap with the Nedap Now platform. And that's kind of where we sit today. There's been a lot of other technologies along the way, feed software, cow recording systems, all those types of things. But as far as monitoring, I think we were probably one of the earlier ones to just monitoring cow behavior.
So that's a pretty long history of having monitoring devices going back 20 plus years now. And so I'm just curious, when you think about what you've been able to learn and gain from having that type of information, where do you think you would be if you hadn't made that investment and started to go on the tech journey back then? Where would you be now?
I take that question a little bit twofold, that we do have really, really great cow people, but without technology, you have to have really, really great cow people. But when you pair those two things together with great employees that care about cows, that know what they're looking for, and we use this modern day technology to find these sick animals 5, 8 days before people could even recognize it, the outcome of that is the best possible outcome for those cows. And so I can't say it replaces people, but it gives people or employees on cow side practice more of an opportunity to return that cow back to the herd. As we look at current modern day cull rates anywhere from 32 to 42%, our goal as a farm is really to try to, we want to stay below 25%. The cost of raising heifers is ever increasing. And how do we do that with more of what we call our golden girls? That's always our goal. We have continued to rely on technology, not to replace people, but to help them make better decisions along the way. And that's probably one of the driving factors that help us invest in new technology.
On this technology journey, you actually just got back from a whole different type of journey, one that took you across the ocean and hanging out with your folks there from Nedap and GEA at their headquarters. Do you want to talk a little bit about your trip to Europe and what you learned from visiting some farms over there?
Yeah, what a great opportunity. Europe has definitely been on my bucket list, and the sites visited were way too short. So my wife and I, Laura, will have to make another trip back over there. But landed in Amsterdam, and the trip was a little bit twofold, just a little bit of business, but also some site tours and trips into Germany. But the focus of the trip really was with Nedap. And so Nedap invited a few different customers that have the Cow Scout collars and are using the Nedap Now platform. And so via Cow Scout collars, but using the software portion of the Nedap Now collars to implement heat detection and health monitoring on our farm. I can tell you they're doing so many more things than that. But that was the focus after our first year of using the software. How does it work for us? What are the likes, the dislikes? What would we like to see implemented? So we spent some time with Nedap and we spent some time with GEA. I was really impressed with the level of investment that Nedap is is doing. So, I mean, Nedap is a multifaceted company, but just to look at the team that they had together for the livestock portion, so many different platforms that they're turning out, rather it just be the Nedap Now that brings all the farm data into a cloud, making it accessible anytime from anywhere for the producers. They're developing more and more ways to process that raw data and turn it into activity, to rumination, to reproduction, health traits, all those things that are so valuable to us as producers, what I might call actionable items. So to bring that to a farmer, they also have just launched, I believe, their smart site data, which the local motion scoring and using the computer vision plus AI to monitor that cow gait and help detect lameness earlier. I know they have, and we're not using that software here on the farm, but they have their smart sort product as well that's designed to sort cows more accurately with less moving parts. And the newest thing that we saw that actually it always gave me confidence, but they launched their smart tag that's for the ear. And so basically the same thing as the collars for the cows, but now they have it in ear placement. And so the effort and technology that's going into building an infrastructure for our current and modernizing dairy farms was pretty fantastic to see. So,
Was there anything that really stands out to you that you picked up from talking with other farmers? What did you learn from hanging out with some other people like you, but that are dairying in different places?
yeah, absolutely. So, had the chance to visit a handful of farms while we were there. Surprisingly enough, they all deal with the same types of issues we do: reproduction management, feed management, employee management. And so I would say the one thing that maybe was a little bit different for Europe was the cost of labor. And so they're much like Canada, being so close to Canada, their advancement and acceptance of technology has been a lot quicker than the United States, and that's just because of labor. We've had good cow side employees that have been readily available and knowledgeable, and as those begin to dissipate and the cost of technology comes down, the U.S. is slowly becoming more and more of an adapter of that. But we still have the same issues. We fight the same fight. I will say that I after being there, feel a bit more blessed. Here every day sitting in my chair, I think I have way too many regulations, which I still do. But compared to Europe, I think we're in a pretty good spot, which allows us to grow.
You came home feeling grateful for some of the opportunities that are available with where you're at, but there's still challenges in your region. And one of those is related to your milk market. Do you want to touch a little bit on some of the specific challenges that you faced in your region when it comes to marketing your milk and being able to be a profitable dairy farm?
As Dairy Gold shipper, as part of our co-op, we've struggled here the last 24 months. And it's been very difficult. Some major deducts from our milk check as we continue to build a new facility in the Pasco area of the part of our state. And so for me and for a lot of our members, as we've seen that milk price, or I should say the deduct, and now currently the milk price is reducing and declining in this back half of the year. Input costs are up. I think feed costs maybe be slightly down, but when you add in the deduction on top of everything else, it's really difficult for our farmers. And unfortunately, some of our farms are having to make some really hard decisions that maybe they wouldn't have generationally made until the next few years. But it's also part of being a co-op. And as a member, we get a lot of benefits from our co-op, but it also comes with some responsibilities back to the co-op. And so when the board decides to do something, they're elected on the behalf of the membership to do that. And so as part of a co-op, we have to go along with that. And I think there's a lot of things to look forward to as well going into the new year, but certainly there'll still be some challenges. We've maybe not invested in as much capital investment that we would. We've replaced the payloaders that needed to be replaced and done the basics and made sure the roofs aren't leaking. But when we look at technology right now, we really have to look at that return on investment. We have to make sure that, hey, is this a sound project that we can move forward with? There's a lot of really nice things we would like to have. That's not really where we're at today. So the struggles that we've seen in the last 24 months, they haven't shifted the focus as a producer, but it's really helped us prioritize our on-farm investments. And so that's where we keep focus.
So as you talk about just the challenge that comes with the deductions and planning for what's ahead, and also looking at how it's impacting your decision making. Mm-hmm. For you, Galen, how does it change the way that you manage the business?
How has our deduct and current marketplaces changed the focus? And I would probably tell you that it hasn't changed the focus. We still look at technology. When I think about technology or I think about our business, it has to be data driven, right? A data driven mindset that making decisions based on objective measures, right? And so we can't just think or feel that might be good. When we look at technology, we try to invest in things that are data driven that give us a sound objective at the end of the day. Everything that we invest in has to be animal centered, right? We have to be focused on cow monitoring systems, on automatic feeding systems, on ventilation, on animal health, on lameness, on all of those things that are sound technologies that have been proven that can provide a real return on investment. And so that's the next thing, right? Return on investment. Every one of these things, the goal is to choose a technology that helps us solve a problem on the farm. Problem could be labor. The problem could be our inability to have qualified labor. It could be feed efficiencies in the way we mix or load feed. So when we do that, those are the things that we're trying to invest in. The other thing that I think that is really important that really gets overlooked from time to time is collaboration. That we are at, I'm not going to say the disposal, but we have so many people that we work with that are, I never pretend to be an expert. We have a herd health team meeting every 2 weeks. It includes our nutritionists, our veterinarians, our semen companies, sometimes our bank. I want to put all these people around the table to help me make the decision, right? So we need a mindset of collaboration that we've got so many advisors that help us to make these decisions. And when everybody buys into that decision, we feel like this is the best place to go forward. And to be honest, my focus is, are we investing in a long-term vision? Is this something that, even if we adapt technology today, is this something that's scalable with herd size? Is it something that will has the ability to adapt and grow? And does it align with how I want my farm to look in the next 5 to 10 years? So as I look at my focus monthly, yearly, 5, 10 years out, I spend more time now, unfortunately, in the office. If I can be in a tractor and throw my phone out the window and run it through the mower, that's probably a really good day for me. But We've been forced to become more and more businessmen, and I enjoy that. I enjoy to solve problems and find new creative ways and adapt to current technologies to help me accomplish all of those goals and ultimately be profitable at year end. That is the ultimate goal.
You talk about making data driven decisions and how it's looking at real numbers and real results in order to have those conversations with your collaborators and to really create that vision for the future. When you look at, again, data driven decision making and this history that you have at Coldstream Farms of monitoring technology and how that's grown and advanced, what would you say have been some of the biggest takeaways and biggest benefits that you've seen in the bottom line that you can tie back to those technology investments?
So, throwing a few companies out that we work with, record keeping for the last 20 years, the integration there with our 50 stall GEA rotary, Nedap with activity monitoring has provided some huge benefits. And I would say this is an area that we're comfortable with. But I also think that the integration between all these companies in the next 5 years with AI and the technologies that are coming, they're going to rapidly expand. If I went back to, well, even our feed system, we put a feed system in 2014, which is the Tree Elite feed management, that technology coming out of the Netherlands as well. Most of that system is automated. So anything that is our most expensive ingredients, meaning our protein, vitamin, mineral packages, our canola, our distillers, anything that has high value, we've tied to a tank and to an auger system. And so as we load that ingredient in, the computer is monitoring that. And so if the computer asks for 962 pounds of canola and it puts in 963, it will learn from that. And next time it will want to shut that switch off 1/16th of a second sooner. So as most producers know, when we're loading ingredients with a payloader, we could be running anywhere from 2 to 6, even possibly 8% shrink. With the automated system, we're running 0.1% mixing error when we attach that to an automated system. So, in the course of a month, as you think about your feed budget, what does 4 or 6 or 8% mean on your high valued ingredients? So, that was something that we implemented. But I think probably some of the highest returns that we've seen here lately have been the implementation of the Cow Scout collar paired with Nedap. And so initially, we always try to get better before bigger, I guess. I want to make sure that everything's operating to its maximum before I take another step. And so when we put the collars on the cows, our main focus was just reproduction. We said, we're going to focus on reproduction for 12 months. And if something comes along for health, great, but let's really focus on reproduction. So at that time, our 2-hour activity tags in 2024 were failing, and we had some issues and sort gate issues, just with readers not always working properly, things outdated. And so at that time, our heat detection was around 55 to 60%, which was not adequate for us. We have a goal of 65 or higher. And so almost immediately after installing the collars on the cows and going through a couple week introductory phase, our heat detection jumped back to exactly where we want it to be, 65%. And so we actually now very regularly hit over 70% heat detection. I also had, maybe to speak to the Nedap Now platform, I had a breeder that was a relief breeder for me and probably not the most technology savvy. And so for him to look at the monitoring system that we had in place at the time was a little bit cumbersome. It was hard to understand. And it was almost difficult for him to decide, is this cow in heat? Is she not? And so he was running about a 32% conception rate. Once we had the Nedap Now platform installed, and for those that haven't seen it, contact your Nedap dealer or GEA dealer as they pair with them. But it really put things just into pictures. It's not in English, it's not in Spanish, it's pictures. And if this cow is a 3-star for heat activity and she's in her window for insemination, breeder. And so he went from 32% to 46% conception rate with just overnight. And so I think probably trying to focus too hard or maybe not understanding the technology that we had in place. So that's just one really simple thing that worked well. But one maybe last thing to share about as we work through the reproduction, the health benefits were probably the most unexpected. And when I say that, I mean, there's lots of things that we can measure, but I'll bring it down to mortality. That we do have some really good cow side guys, and we were running probably a 3 or to 5% annual mortality rate. And since really focusing within probably the last 3 to 4 months on the health traits, initially it's like, oh, it's the cow says she's sick, maybe she is. We'll see if the sort gate catches her. Well, pretty soon, if you don't pay attention to that cow, she is down in the stall. And so, what the callers have really done and taught us over time is they're picking that cow up 5 to 8 days sooner than what we're seeing. If the program Nedap now says she's sick, go get her and get her into the hospital and see what's going on. So, we've now dropped our mortality for 2025. We're currently running 1.6%. So, it still happens on a dairy, but we've either been able to return those cows back into production or make a culling decision on those values, and either one of those provide a return to the farm. So the caller is helping us to make a more timely decision, a better decision. Lots of times it's therapeutic treatment rather than antibiotics or systemic treatment, or hey, it's time to go down the road. But catching those in a timely manner, which we really didn't put any value into when we purchased the technology. We really just said, hey, reproduction is going to pay for it. Anything else is a bonus. Probably the one other thing we just stopped doing here just after my trip back to the Netherlands, is we quit temping our fresh cows. And one small example is our program was temp every cow for the first 10 days. Just because she has a temperature doesn't mean we're going to do anything. But after 10 days, hey, we're going to assume she's fine. So we just implemented this 2 weeks ago. Hey, we're not going to tempt the cows anymore. If she's on your list, go check her. Well, we just caught a cow that was a DA, 14 days in milk. And he had another cow that was, I think, 16 days in milk that was lame. And otherwise, those cows in our fresh pen were reliant on excellent guys to find those cows. So not only has he shortened his time in the fresh pen from an hour down to 20 minutes to 15 minutes, we're really finding the cows that need immediate attention. So the health benefits of the collar of the Nedap Now platform continue to pay off. And we just stuck a collar on our scraping tractor too. I learned that from a farmer in the Netherlands. How often's my scraper? Yeah. How often's my scraper tractor moving? We can put all kinds of fancy sensors and everything else, but we just tied one of our activity monitor collars to our scraping tractor, and now I can make sure feed's getting pushed up every 2 hours.
You're monitoring more than cattle now. What a fun little trick. Well, yeah, maybe there'll be some other producers that take that one home and are attaching devices on their scraping tractors. But, Galen, as you talk about that, what really stands out to me is the way that you've been able to hit some pretty big goals. And one of the goals that you talked about earlier in this conversation today was having more older cows in the herd. And that plays right back into repro and being able to pick up on those sick cows sooner so that there's less cows that are leaving the herd for those two reasons. And it sounds like you guys have some pretty clear and specific goals that you set for the farm and for yourselves, and you hold the cows and your team to a high standard to get there. It's neat to just understand how data has gone to work to do some big things for your dairy. At the end of the day, too, there's that profitability piece. And do you see opportunities, too, where you've been able to save some labor, save some people that would have been doing certain tasks? I know you talked a little bit about reducing some of the labor with fresh cows. That's got to be one area that I would imagine stands out when you put a pencil to paper, huh?
Well, I think some of our feeding systems and have saved time and efficiencies, but I think what it's done when I think about technology as a whole, no doubt it has shaved some time off our day, but it's really allowed our cowside guys to focus their effort where it really needs to be focused. Right? We don't need to go out and walk through a pen and check 150 cows. There's 8 cows that need attention. So how about we spend all of that time focusing on the 8 cows and get better outcomes? And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's allowed us to do. And I think that's what it's is to get better outcomes for the animals that we have. And so as we are adopting this health value that we're getting from the cow scalp collars, is how can we take our colt rate from 25% to 20? And how do we raise less heifers and keep animals longer in the herd? These are conversations that are fun to have. I think the data and everything else behind it help us solve these problems, and sometimes maybe even identify problems that we potentially didn't know we had. One of the conversations that we had in the Netherlands is now Nedap is beginning to look at behaviors during the dry period and what might stimulate some type of metabolic disease, whether it's ketosis or milk fever, or even further as a DA or metritis or dystocia. What events happen during that 60-day window that could impact that? And now, how do we identify the most susceptible animals in our herd? And once we can identify them and we have plans in place to help those animals, productive life and milk value, all those things are a return to us as a producer that we get to capture as the value in our pocket. So I wouldn't say that it's been a huge decrease in labor. It's made us, or it's allowed us to focus our energy for better outcomes.
That's a really strong point to make, Galen, is the value of focus and where you place that focus and attention, and you see the benefits of that across the herd and with the team at the dairy. And so thank you for just enlightening us on what this technology journey has been. I appreciate so much the conversation today, Galen, and thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Absolutely. Appreciate your time today, and really appreciate the podcast that you put together. And I guess probably about 90% of them. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You just heard from Galen Smith of Coldstream Farms here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. But there's a little more to Galen's story, and it's not just a story of technology, but also a story of family farm transition. And so we're not done with Galen yet. Make sure to tune in for our next episode where we pivot topics from technology to family farm transition, a story that I hope you find value in and can relate to, and even gain some insights from in whatever phase of transition you might be in on your dairy. Well, I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to this Uplevel Dairy Podcast. As always, keep on growing, keep on learning, and up-leveling your dairy.